I see that we have quorum, so I call this meeting to order. Honorable colleagues, members of Parliament, and fellow Canadians that follow this meeting live today, welcome to meeting number 30 of the Special Joint Committee on the Declaration of Emergency, which was established pursuant to the orders of the House of Commons and the Senate of March 2nd and 3rd, 2022. Today's public hearing is being held in a hybrid format in accordance with the Senate and House of Commons orders. I'd like to point out that a sound test was carried out with our members online attending this meeting via video conference, and that the clerk confirmed that everything was fine. In the event of a technical problem, please let me know so that we can suspend the meeting for a few minutes to allow all members to participate fully. Before we begin, I would like to remind all senators and other meeting participants of the following important preventative measures. To prevent disruptive and potentially harmful audio feedback incidents during our meeting that could cause injuries, remind all in-person participants to keep their earpieces away from all microphones at all times. As indicated in the communique from the Senate and the House of Commons speakers to all senators and MPs on Monday, April 29th, the following measures have been taken to help prevent audio feedback incidents. Number one, all earpieces have been replaced by a model which greatly reduces the probability of audio feedback. The new earpieces are black in color, whereas the former earpieces were gray. Please use only a black-approved earpiece. By default, all unused earpieces will be unplugged at the start of a meeting. When you're not using your earpiece, please place it face down on the middle of the round sticker that you see in front of you on the table where indicated. Please consult the card on the table for guidance to prevent audio feedback incidents. Please ensure that you are seated in a manner that increases the distance between microphones. Participants must only plug in their earpieces to the microphone console located directly in front of them. I remind you these measures are in place so that we can conduct our business without interruption and to protect the health and safety of all participants, including our interpreters. Thank you all for your cooperation. Dear colleagues, members of Parliament, following our last meeting, you all received the following documents via email from our joint clerks. First, the written response from the Privy Council Office to questions from Mr. Motts following their appearance on the 27th of February 2024. Secondly, Exhibits Index, list of the 8,900 files available to the public on the POEC website. Thirdly, Senator Carignan list. The first set of documents was received by committee members on April 26, 2024. The second set of documents should be received by the end of May. A response received today to Mr. Fortin's letter sent on March 21st. Still to be considered by the committee is an index of all evidence submitted to the POEC, which is approximately 130,000 items. I will now open the floor for discussion.
Oui, merci Madame la Présidente.
Thank you very much, Chair. I'd like to start by thanking. Well, we're starting to receive the documentation now in French, including the index, which is very important, and 900 pages. Just the index is a list of 900 pages long, and we received it in French. So this allows us to be able to identify, using the index, the various rubrics under which an issue is being discussed. So that's important. And our mandate, of course, is to examine the exercise of the authority as allowed under the Act. Obviously, we haven't received all the documents in French yet. I haven't seen it in French, but I'm referring to the one in English. That's the memorandum to the Prime Minister to trigger the use of the Act. I haven't received that document in French. So there are documents here and there that are quite significant, and yet they're only in English so far. Hopefully we'll get them before the 30th of May, because in a previous letter, I think that the deadline was supposed to be available to us in their entirety by the 31st of May. I'm anxious to see the progress of the provision of these documents, and as quickly translated as quickly as possible, of course. And I would hope that PCO, well, with AI, of course, I think that they could have translated this 900 pages of index quite quickly. However, I'd suggest that we'll be able to better identify the individual documents that each of us thinks of pertinence to our mandate. And we could request the provision of these documents in both official languages. Off the top, we don't know if the document is in French and in English at the time. We may identify a document we think we need, but it may not yet be translated. So if it's only in one of our two official languages, we'll have to ensure that they are translated so that we can introduce them as evidence and advance our work as a committee. So rather lengthy preamble, if you will, but I wanted to thank the progress being done and the expectations for future progress to continue.
Thank you. And certainly thank you to Miriam and the staff who have been coordinating back and forth these demands for documents. We still seem to find ourselves in a bit of a bind administratively. It looks like our timelines have two future deadlines, one of them kind of being met sometime in June, if I recall. And, you know, I think June 14th was the date. And I'm still stuck on the fact, quite frankly, that I don't know that there's going to be anything material from the evidence that would materially force us to deviate, recognizing the fact, obviously, the federal decision has come. It's for the consideration, it's for the archives of the study, if you will, and perhaps there might be some aspects of this which may alter some of us in our voting on previous draft resolutions and recommendations on the actual report. But we're now a good 2 years into this, and you know, it would be my preference that at some point there's a consideration that we do revisit the report writing stage, with the caveat that we leave open before the finalization of the recommendations in the report a way to revisit, whether they're straw votes or recorded votes, the outcomes of our draft reporting stage. And, you know, and so even by that metric, like, to be clear, that would put us on course for reporting back sometime in the fall, if we're being frank. Because if we didn't finalize report writing stage and we waited until the June submission dates, assuming that they are delivered, then the bulk of the work of translation would have been funded and completed. It would provide likely the summertime for those members that are interested to go through the thousands, tens of thousands of documents or what have you. If I say that, Madam Chair, because if the index was several hundred pages, I can only imagine what the final requests will be. But at some point in the fall, I would hope that we can begin a writing phase or work towards the completion of this committee, which, from my opinion, as somebody who really pushed on the mandate and on the expanded visions of this, to begin to come to a close. I think it's irresponsible for us to pursue this committee in perpetuity And so I'm wondering if there's comments from our colleagues about our ability, perhaps over these next couple of weeks, to set aside a time within our meetings to revisit the report writing stage, setting aside any finalization, but working in parallel with the translations. So that's just I say that with respect to the work that's been done. I've been in support of the work. We're all in support of the translations of the work, but I do think that given the deadlines we have right now, if we don't begin to open up a parallel track for the consideration of report writing stage, we may see a scenario where, notwithstanding the fact we don't get back until late September, where we're actually now pushing it potentially into the following year. And I would just say I have very little appetite to push this committee into the next calendar year. So those are my statements, and hopefully we can begin a discussion that provides us with some rational, practical consideration of ways that we can hopefully do the work of the report writing stage, leave space open for the translation, and then at the end, perhaps reflect upon any spaces that might come in conflict with new information as presented by members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I'll move to Senator Harder.
Thank you very much, Chair. And I thank Member of Parliament Green for his comments, and I want to associate myself with his suggestion. I think we really need to expedite as best as we can the work of the committee while respecting that there is still translation underway. And I think the best way of doing that is to advance the work that we had done to see how far we could get in terms of the writing of a report. And that I don't expect could be completed in its final form by June, but we could have a pretty good draft, which could then be subject to a review early in the fall with a view of getting this committee work completed. And I strongly suggest that we do that. Otherwise, doing it sequentially, we will see this into year 3, and I don't think people are waiting with bated breath for our work, but they will be long asleep by the time we work in that sequence. So please, colleagues, if we could, let's spend the next number of weeks going through and revisiting the work plan that we were underway, and meanwhile, getting the translation as requested, but bringing the report to a conclusion early fall.
Okay, Senator Carignan.
Oui, écoutez, moi, j'ai pas de problème à ce.
Well, I have no problem with, we hope to have the report ready in the fall, early in the fall. I wouldn't have a problem with that. But we're doing our work very diligently and conscientiously. We need access to the evidence which has been brought before us. Now, a few interesting items. The mandate of the committee is to examine the exercise of authority in the implementation of the declaration of emergency. So how did they do that? I've identified a number of documents on the how they implemented to situations of urgent emergency, of crisis situations, and how the process evolved. There was also a question of an agreement with the mayor of Ottawa, how they agreed to could exclude certain individuals from the streets, and there was an agreement as to who and how. I had many questions, in fact, to the RCMP before the 14th of July to find out what was going on. I'd like to, and there was always this confusion in who did what, RCMP or local police force. Some issues are going to be very significant in our mandate. The devil's in the details, and I feel that I know the documents are there. We don't have the opportunity to see it. We write a report anyway. I don't think so. We have to have access to the documents in order to have firm proof of our report and have a complete, thorough report. Thank you.
Mr. Fortin? Mr. Brock?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Vous aviez vu
Thank you, Chair. You saw my raised hand? I didn't see it. Oh, there it is. Okay, I'll lower my hand now. I am pretty much on the same frequency as Senator Carignan. I see the path that we've taken, and I can work there. We have this index. I'm quite happy that we have received it on the 26th of the month. In a general fashion, this index, it's not in Word, it's a PDF format or some other format. I'm having difficulty manipulating the information with the titles, the columns. I think we should have a title page, a title on each page with a number, an indication as to what is in that page, perhaps a table of contents for the following section. 000378, and then there's 12722. I suppose that it's the 27th of January, I guess, but then there's some redactions and a further date. So I imagine it may be an email, but I don't really know. I understand that it was redacted, but we don't know what's been redacted. And trouble expected in 3 border crossings. So that's not much information. We wanted to have the details. And what is reflected in my letter of the 21st of March, we requested an index with the title of the document, the subject, the date, the number of pages, the language in which it was composed. That alone, the description or the abstract of that document. 900 pages of documentation. I don't know how many thousands of documents that would be. And I'm not going to quibble about that. But if we're to decide which ones we must have and which we do not require, we'd be better put to prepare our report. Maybe it's me that's not reading it right, but I didn't see that it was any order to it. It's not in alphabetical order. It's not in chronological order. It's 900 pages. Now, how do we sort this out in order to understand the logic behind these documents, the sequence? So whoever put together the index, they may be containing all the documents, but if it was in Word, I could do it myself. I could reformat and do it myself, but we don't know exactly what process or system was used to create this index. It has to be logical. I don't care if it's alphabetical or chronological, but I think chronological would be the best way to go about it. And it would be a much more useful document. I think it's difficult enough to try to decide in just a certain number of fixed hours between now and the fall. I think that once we received all the documentation that we requested and we are familiar with the documents, then we can get somewhere. But as I say, this is very tantalizing. I appreciate what was done. Don't forget that we made this request last June, and we repeated it in a more formal fashion last fall, 27th of February once again. I thought it might, be a little bit confusing. So this is why I wrote the letter I did. I quoted part of the mandate, and then I'm sure that the PCO officers would have the same notion of what we needed. But I'm still not completely satisfied with what we have. I understand that there's some significant delays, translation and all, but I'm not sure if this is normal delays or time spans. Everybody looks at me quizzically when I talk about these documents. They're talking about 6 or 7 weeks, or no, working days to translate 1,000 lines of text. That to me, that seems like a lot of time for 1,000 lines. What is it? Shortage of qualified help, or software, or what? That seems somewhat odd that it would take that much time, 7 working days, to translate 1,000 lines of text. I'm not an expert. I don't know if that's reasonable or not, but it seems a lot of time for not too much text. So if the index were better structured, chronologically, for example, would allow us much easier access to the relevant documents. We could do that sorting ourselves. Thank you.
I move to Mr. Brock, who will be followed by Mr. Green. Mr. Brock?
Thank you, Chair. Good to see my colleagues again, senators. Always a pleasure. I've listened, excuse me, I've listened very carefully. I lost my voice during question period. I wonder why. you couldn't see me. I was going to make a GC Strategies joke, but I don't see anyone here on OGO or PROC, so they won't get the joke. But in any event, I listened very carefully to colleagues' commentary, and I'm a little dismayed that we are 11 months removed from the original request. And although some progress has made, clearly unsatisfactory to my Francophone colleagues, that causes me great concern. I share Monsieur Fortin's frustration in terms of the length of time that it takes to translate 1,000 lines. That being said, I'm also mindful of Senator Harder's comments and Matthew Green's comments, Mr. Green's comments, and I think we can all walk and chew gum at the same time. So I think there is an arguable case to proceed to pick up where we left off. Obviously, in the fall, I think would be the starting point, and then the hopes that more productive activity would take place on the translation front. But at the end of the day, I will not feel comfortable producing any report, whether it's a unanimous consensual report or a dissenting report, without the full participation of my Francophone colleagues and they being fully satisfied that they've received sufficient information from Justice Rouleau's committee. So that, with that caveat in mind, those are, I believe, our conservative position on this particular matter, and happy to chime in if there's any other issue I think is worthy of it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brock. Mr. Green?
Thank you. And I do appreciate the walking and chewing gum. I do think it is something we can do. And I do, again, acknowledge the importance that we passed a motion duly at this committee, I think with full support. I can share with you, I have zero interest on moving the goalposts. I have zero interest on sending back another motion to reframe how we're going to receive information. I've heard reference of people, talking about artificial intelligence for translation. I would put to you that there's probably platforms that you can use to sort your information in whatever way possible. There's certainly ways to transfer PDFs to Word documents online. But what I'm not going to be supporting, I can just share this now, and I say this with due respect, is sending back a motion that will force sorting of the information that we just received. At this point, I am satisfied that we are receiving the information, certainly not in due time as has been reported, But we do have staff, we do have responsibilities within our own office to sort information, to do with it whatever way we see fit. And my concern is that if we get it in chronological, somebody else will say alphabetical, and then it'll be by theme. And I'll just share with you that I think it's responsible for us to receive the information and within our own office, within our own party resources, organize that information whatever way we see possible. So I just want to get right out in front and say I will not be supporting any motions to send this information back to be resorted to come back at a later date. I would like to get an understanding from the room how they see these next few weeks going leading into June, how they see the best use of our time in terms of, hopefully revisiting the previous stage we were at in the draft document writing phase. Again, setting aside the mandate of this committee, and we fought for this mandate. I'm sure you can go back to the Hansard, that we are masters of our own domain, that we were running parallel to the rouleau, and that was certainly our position before. I fought alongside with my opposition colleagues to move forward and not wait for the rouleau commission. Some of you may recall, and I'm not trying to, impugn anybody, but the government side had some early suggestions that we should either wrap things up before the rouleau commission or wait, and so we're not mandated to be a book report club on the rouleau commission. That was never part of our mandate. We received a year and a half of testimony, the direct testimony to our committee on witnesses that we called, and the Rouleau Commission did a separate track with a separate mandate. So while I do think that the information, is germane, I don't think, for myself anyways, that it will provide a material departure from my previous positions. And so I'm satisfied with the testimony that we got. I'm satisfied with what I think is going to be a report that certainly will not be unanimous. I've begun working on my own supplementary, whether it's dissenting or not, based on my experience. I don't think that's going to change. I don't think anybody's going to find consensus on this very sensitive topic. And I really do hope and call on our colleagues here to find a way to get back to work in this committee so that we're not just waiting in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Green. Ms. Ramonato, to be followed by Mr. Fortin.
Merci beaucoup, Madame la Présidente. And I just want to make sure I'm understanding the position of everyone at the committee, because the will of the committee is how we will move forward. So I see two options. One option is we continue to work on the report, the draft report, in parallel waiting while more documentation is being submitted to the committee, with the understanding that more documents will come over the summer. Very likely we'll start meeting again in September to go through additional requests, documents, and so on and so forth, with the goal of hopefully submitting a report before end of year. The other option is the committee not meet and wait for all of these documents, at which point I'm not sure if we will be submitting a report. And I just want to make sure I understand, because we have 6 weeks of House sitting weeks between now and before the House rises. We have competing requests from committees to use the time. Many committees are going to be reporting back on other studies that they're doing. And I would not want, and I don't think anyone here would want, for us to be meeting on a weekly basis to reiterate what we've been saying for the last couple of months. So I'd like to get an understanding, what is the will of the committee? Do we suspend and come back in September when we have more documentation? Or do we work between now and the end of the sitting on the report in parallel? I just want to make sure I understand where everyone is, because I don't want to waste anyone's time. The work that you've done here is incredibly important, but this is the will of the committee. We need to know what is the will of the committee. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Fortin, to be followed by Senator Harder, to be followed by Senator Carignan. Mr. Fortin.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm listening quite attentively to my colleague, Mr. Green, Member Green, and his concerns as to these delays. And I think that we all wish to have this project accomplished as quickly as possible. But you can understand the problem if we have different access, if you will. As to the Rural Commission, we don't have to report or what he did say or didn't say. We're not going to simply parrot what he has said. But you may recall the motion that was adopted by this committee about a year ago. I don't have the exact date. But in order to limit the period of time given to hearings, to evidence, to witnesses, we accepted to use what was presented to the commissioner. Now, if a witness appeared before him, we tried to find a reference to it and use it for the drafting of our own report. If we're not in a position to obtain all of the evidence in both official languages, well, the alternative is to say we will call these people to witness again. I don't know if that's any better, but it's a possibility. Let's set aside the motion that we made prior to the sitting of the Rural Commission. The fact, whether the report of the Commission complies with the Official Languages Act is not our concern and it's not our mandate, but we could call witnesses, we could start over again. Is that going to go any faster? I'm not so sure. I think we should try to avoid a complicated path here. I'm still of the opinion that the decision that was taken about a year ago, we could make use of the Rural Commission testimonies. It's common sense. It's good common sense. But we have to have it available in both official languages. And we have to arrive at some solution. So we take a look at the index, and based on that index, we'll select what we want and don't need. Now, if all of this is in French, would the Anglophone colleagues saying, well, we don't need all of this, we'll keep what we want, and if they wanted everything in English, well, that's fair. But we also need the return favor of having it all in French.
Carter.
Thank you, Chair. Let me try to answer, from my part, the questions that Member of Parliament Raimondo and Matt Green raised. I think we should go in camera for the next number of weeks and return to writing the report as we were doing and take it as far as we possibly can and reconvene in the fall when we have hopefully additional translated documents where we can individually reassess our points of view as we reached conclusions with respect to the report. Not to do that will simply mean let's just advance it all to sometime in the fall, and I'll guarantee you we'll be here for the third anniversary. And again, I think it's on our part to advance this as consensually as possible, but to do our work.
Senator Carignan, followed by Mr. Green.
Oui, je m'excuse, mais moi, je peux pas attendre.
Well, I apologize, but I don't think I can be in agreement with what Senator Harbour just said. We requested an index in both official languages so we can identify documents. We've just received this document, this index. Now we have to select those documents which to us seem to be significant, pertinent. It's already a compromise in a way. And Mr. Fortin, I think, did describe the problem and proposed a few possible solutions. In order to identify the pertinent, the significant documents, 19th of February, 1944, a report of the situation, incident report perhaps, on that day. Now, there's an incident report on a daily basis in there. We want to know how these emergency measures were taken. So we have the daily reports. Well, we can't really, well, we don't have the time to look at all of that, so we'll write a report and we'll review them over the summer and we'll see what we found and we'll find what we need to match what we have already reported. So we'll be there in the fall saying, well, the evidence that we could gather or had access to, let's really consider it. So let's get all the evidence and take a look. So in the few meetings that we may have between now and the summer break, let's take a look at the evidence and see that our communications with PCO or Translation Bureau ensure that we obtain the documents that we need in both official languages as quickly as possible in a timely fashion. So perhaps I'm a bit more optimistic that Senator Harder. I think that in the fall we should be in a position to finalize a report.
Clarify, because I want to make sure that I understood. Am I clear that you're saying we continue our meetings so that we can identify the documents? And so we will be meeting over the next few weeks into June to try to identify the documents and to see what progress that we can make in terms of those documents. Am I correct?
Oui, dans
Yes, in order to identify the evidence that we need, we'll continue. Some are translated, so we have a part of the evidence that we need already, perhaps. We wanted an index so that we could dig as deeply as possible and get as much information as possible. So we asked this document from PCO. Now, to tell us it's a list, and the list is 800, 900 pages long. Well, we don't need just a list of the documents. We need the documents as well. So we have to have a good description of what they actually are. But let's carry on, and we can have a number of meetings between now and the summer break so that we have a proper framework plan, if you will, so that the work can continue on.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Green.
Thank you. I just want to remind members that we do, in fact, have the Rouleau Commission report and a substantive extended version of the report in both official languages, in keeping with the Official Languages Act, as per the Commission's mandate. At this time, Madam Chair, I would like to move a motion that we proceed with the remaining meetings in camera to revisit and pick up where we left off at the draft reporting stage, setting aside an opportunity to revisit any outstanding information that may be presented that members of this committee may want to take from the primary evidence if they think that it has material impact on the recommendations that we've had to date. And I think that, not doing such is irresponsible with our time, with our mandate, and would risk us being pushed into the new year. So with that, I'm moving the motion formally and am open to discussion, but I don't think we're going to find consensus on this. And I think that this is a point where we do just have to get to a point where we get to a vote and use the remaining few weeks of our time judiciously to be able to advance the final conclusion of this committee. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion that's been moved. Mr. Smith, you're next Senator Smith, you're next on our list.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, I'm very new within this group. Just a couple of things that are stood out in my mind is
A point of order, Madam Chair. and I don't mean to disrupt Senator
Excuse
Smith,
me.
and I apologize.
Quick.
The motion is on the floor.
Yeah.
I'd like to see a text of the motion. Mr. Green elaborated at great length. I don't know if all of that explanation is part of the motion, and it should be in both official languages, of course.
Point of order. On the point of order, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Motions come to committee at hand all the time orally. It's part of our standing orders. The motion is to proceed in camera to go back to our draft reporting stage, keeping open the ability to revisit its finalization in the fall. That is the motion. It is a duly put motion procedurally that does not require it to be distributed in writing. It is also translated in real time as per the standing orders and translation of official committee business.
Point of order on the point of order on the point of order, Madam Chair. It has been customary with this committee to have motions in writing.
On the point of order, Mr. Fortin?
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Je ne sais plus à quel
Thank you, Chair. I don't know which point of order on the point of order we're at, but I'm trying to understand here. I think that what Member Green is to try to get back to work on the report. I'm not prepared to work on drafting a report tonight, but we have to continue to improve and develop in depth the report. But I don't see why we should be going in camera tonight. There's a motion. We already have a motion for the production of documents, and that process should occur in public, not in camera. I think perhaps we have to keep our chambers current as to what we're doing also. Interim reports perhaps, or well, they'll ask a question. They'll say, did you receive everything you needed? It's a bit fast for that. Perhaps I didn't understand Member Green's question. I don't think that we need to go in camera right now to work on the report. Not tonight in any case, perhaps at a future meeting.
I heard wrong, Mr. Green. I'd ask you to correct me, but I don't believe you said to go in camera tonight. Okay.
Just for the record, Madam Chair, the intention is a direction for the planning of future meetings. Report writing is done in camera. That is what is typical. That is what we were doing prior to the translation situation in motion. And so my suggestion is for the remaining time of these last few weeks, that gives us a week to revisit where we left off, to have the chairs report back to the committee where we left off, to go back to the report writing stage, keeping open, not finalizing, the ability for members who feel it important to revisit with the appropriate evidence as it is translated, to come back and have that addressed at the report writing stage. So I did not refer to us beginning the report writing stage now. This is for the future direction of the work. And I would just put to my colleagues that the other option, again, is for us to simply suspend or, as Mr. Carrion stated, go in a completely different direction that would deal with the minutia of the documents at hand. I would leave it to every individual member of this committee to deal with the translated documents in whatever way they see fit. I myself am ready and prepared to go back to draft reporting and to begin a phase that allows us to wrap this up before the next calendar year.
Anyone else who wants to speak on the motion? Ms. Romanato, Senator Smith, were you speaking on the motion itself?
I think so.
I'd welcome your comments.
I just wanted to bring up a few thoughts. In cases, I've lived in a different world, of course, but we had a lot of report writing when we had disciplinary situations in sport and then bankruptcies and what we're going to do. seems to be some key words: momentum, focus, and sense of urgency. Is there momentum? What type of focus do we have, and what type of sense of urgency do we have? What's the group interest, and what are we working as a group for all Canadians, or are we working for ourselves and strictly whether we're conservative? What side of the fence are we on? I think that you've got to recognize, and I'm sure everybody does, but once you get into the summertime, lights go out. You can be the best person in the world, but you're looking for your rest. So what can be done between now and when we break? And what type of momentum can we create that will give some gas into the fall period? And do we have enough support folks around can do some grunt work that's going to develop some form of continuity so that when we come back in the fall, we're not going to be just, oh my goodness, we've been off all summer, you know. So I put that on the floor as a rookie, but I've been in business for 45 years and I think I understand it. And I've been in leadership positions, but momentum, focus, sense of urgency, there needs to be some commonality around the room here. The game plan is not going to solve anything. And are we working for the interest of Canadians or our own self-interest? That needs to be really thought through.
Mr. Maloney? Yeah. Followed by Senator Harder.
I support Mr. Green's motion, and I couldn't agree more with Senator Smith.
Senator Harder.
I can be equally brief, and I thank Mr. Green for his motion. I think the only way to regain some momentum and some focus and some sense of urgency is to continue our work in camera on the report with the caveat that Mr. Green has introduced, and I would hope that we can call the question.
Any more discussion?
If you can please ask Mr. Green to repeat his motion.
Mr. Green, I'm going to ask you to just repeat the motion.
That the committee return back into camera for the remaining weeks to continue the work on the draft report writing phase, not excluding the ability to revisit in the fall any new information as presented in the translated documents for our consideration and finalization of the report.
Est-ce que je peux parler?
Yes, the motion's just been repeated. Senator Carignan?
Oui.
Thank you, Chair. We're awaiting documents. During the month of May, I'm sure we're going to receive some. And there's a break week in May, I believe, as well. So if we resume the work, we will be receiving some documents in the interim, assuming that they will be provided as PCO has told us they would. I might be more compliant than that. Because you see, each party will have probably different points of view on even the material of the Royal Commission. And I'm quite sure that these are reliable documents coming from the Commission because they were heavily debated by and assisted with lawyers. And if we're going to have at least those documents and to further our study, this would allow us to identify in our draft report that we could add information, add evidence where there might be some weaknesses or gaps. At least if we give ourselves the month of May to receive those documents which we deem missing, and we could use what we have left in June to go in camera and debate.
Not being disrespectful, I'm trying to look at the calendar to see what timing.
Yeah,
so you're suggesting, if I use as an example, the 28th of May, we would have almost all the documents because they're giving them as they get them. And next week, obviously.
So the week after,
So the week after we'd be on break, and then we come back from the break, you're suggesting we would start meeting and going through them. So it's a 1 week, essentially 1 week delay, I think. I'm sorry, I'm trying to figure the.
en fait, là, on est le 30 avril.
Well, we're on the last day of April. We have a full week next week. Is it a break week or a work week? Well, the letter we received from PCO over the last few hours, between now and the 30th of May, they will be providing documents. If we get them next week, well, we can start sooner. But if we can get them if we can start studying them and analyzing them as we get them.
All that together?
Well, colleagues, I don't think we need to review the documents that we receive in committee. And we certainly don't need to today decide what to do about that. I don't have a problem, Senator Carignan, if later in our work we have received sufficient documents that we want to, before the fall, reflect that in our considerations. But I just think we should get back to work and restore, as my Senate colleague suggests, some momentum, some focus, and some urgency to our work. And the documents will come, and we will be able to assess them. They may or may not be of relevance, but we can decide that when we see them.
Je m'excuse là.
Sorry, Senator or Mr.
Non, mais
Brock.
juste un point là.
No, just a comment here. I really don't like this notion that we're letting it pass as if we're not really doing the work because we don't have the documents yet. We are working. We receive the documents, we take a look at them, we study what we have to. It's not because we're not sitting in the committee that we are not working. Now, you know, if a workman is short on nails, he's not doing nothing because he's waiting for his nails.
Monsieur Carignan, in my opinion, Madam Chair, has suggested a reasonable middle ground to this approach. So that being said, I'm prepared to move an amendment to Mr. Green's motion to read that this committee resume its review of the draft report commencing on Tuesday, May the 28th, 2024.
Okay. Any comments on the amendment?
Yes.
Mr. Maloney?
What does that mean we're doing on May the 21st? So we're going to come sit here and wait for documents to arrive? Why don't
We're not sitting.
Okay. I just want to be clear. So what does
Yeah.
it mean? We are sitting that week. It's the previous week we're not sitting. So it means we're not having a meeting the week we're sitting, which is the week of May the 20th.
With permission, I know I didn't have my hand up. The whole idea, when I'm listening to Senator Carignan, is that we expect another tranche of documents to be received by this committee over the next several days and several weeks. Presumably, most of that tranche will be delivered before the 28th of May. That gives us roughly 3 to 4 consecutive Tuesdays before we rise.
Okay, in that case, Madam Chair, I would not support the sub-amendment because Mr. Green's motion allows us the latitude of when we receive the next tranche or the tranche after that, which we will continue to do. Sure it does, because it leaves the option open of looking at those documents as they come along while we're doing the report. What Mr. Brock's sub-amendment does is delay starting that report, and it just means we lose more time because I anticipate that when we get here on May the 28th, we're going to have the same discussion we had tonight. So I will be voting against the sub-amendment.
Mr. Motz?
Hold on.
I have to say that, I respect Mr. Maloney's comments. However, there is a significant portion of the report already started. We've been working on prior to you joining the committee. And, quite honestly, I appreciate the conversation around the table. I think there's a balance we have to strike. I respect my Francophone colleagues and their needs to have access to the information that they feel is important. And, but I also agree that we need to move forward as expediently as possible, in line with Senator Harder and Mr. Green's comments of, getting at the report and, doing that in an expeditious manner. However, I've put myself in the position of my colleagues, Mr. Fortin and Senator Senator Carignan, and quite honestly, I'm troubled that we don't have more documents that were translated at commission, and that would we don't know what's for them to make that decision. If I was in their shoes, I would probably have the same position. I'd be concerned that I might miss something. And as Senator Smith said, we're here for the Canadian public, and that means that we're supposed to study the exercise of the authorities to invoke the act, and that's different than what the Commission explored. And we should be doing that as expeditiously as possible, or also as thoroughly as possible. So I think the compromise that Mr. Brock brings forward is an opportunity to get more documents translated for our Francophone colleagues. It allows for an opportunity for us all to explore those documents, and they may be of value and they may not be of value. We don't know for sure yet. But I can tell you that my goal was still to have this report done by the end of June. That does not appear to be possible. But for sure by early fall is reasonable, and in fairness to both official languages, I think we need to have some sort of compromise, and those are my thoughts at this time.
Others? Any other comments? The question I would like just to ask of all members on this, is there anything around the documents that could be done in the intervening weeks? I go to what Mr. Fortin's comments were around sorting documents and stuff. Is there anything that we could accomplish with respect to the documents in those 2 weeks that that we have time allotted, but nothing on our agenda? So it's a question I ask, and I'd like to suspend just for 5 minutes, and we'll come back for the vote.
Madame la Présidente, j'avais levé la main. C'est possible.
I would like to
we're back. Apologize for the delay. Mr. Brock, I understand, and then I need to go to Mr. Fortin. Mr. Brock?
Thank you, Chair. I'm seeking unanimous consent to alter the commencement date of my amendment from the 28th of May to now read the 21st of May, the Tuesday following our break week.
All right. Mr. Fortin, do you want to speak to that amendment? Or are you good?
C'est sûr que ça demeure un autre compromis, là. Il faut en être conscient.
Well, that's just another compromise here, but I don't think that we're going to make the deadline. I don't know that we'll have access to the documents that we need in French to the extent that they're available through my Anglophone colleagues. We have to get there, and I'm quite disappointed and of the way that we're exercising bilingualism here. But it's okay to be bilingual, but if it's going to cost us time or money, work it out. If I want to be practical, I understand full well that the motion 21st of May, well, we can see what we can do on the 21st of May, but I will work in good faith to try to have our report progress. But I'm a bit skeptical that we're going to end up with an exhaustive report because we're going to be missing evidence. This being said, I had raised my hand earlier because you asked what we can do in the interim. And I think what we should be doing in the meantime is perhaps a progress report, an interim report to both houses, both chambers. May the 23rd would be the deadline. A short, succinct report that our work had been suspended since the fall in expectation of translation of documents, which we still don't have, but we'll continue to work with the documents that we do have. I'm not talking about a 20-page report, just a short report to let them know in those two chambers that we're still alive and working.
First, I think we have agreement around the table. I'm just watching the screen to make it the 21st.
Can I just ask a
Yeah.
question? What is it we're going to, based on Mr. Brock's proposal, what is it going to happen then on the 21st? Are we dealing with the report?
Yes.
We're dealing with the report.
Okay, so how does that change anything other than the date? And in camera.
And the documentation that we need.
It's a compromise to starting next week,
Okay.
knowing full well that the likelihood of us satisfying our Francophone colleagues with another tranche is probably not going to happen in less than 7 days. We have the break week following that, so that's the compromise from the 28th to the 21st.
And I think Senator Carignan had also indicated
Oui.
if there's issues or
Oui, mais
pieces
je veux, en fait, pour moi, le premier point à l'ordre du
Well, the first point on the agenda, I think, those who would like to identify the index, 900 pages of index, which we should have in a bilingual format and an organized format. There's a lot of documents that are only in French as well in that index. So we identify those documents that need to be translated in the second language, English or French. And so then we can update and amend the draft that we have already begun to draft, but without prejudice and always reserving the right to make sure that we have all the documentation that we need.
The opportunity that be an ongoing process because you can identify at any point and we can start putting the list together. So I'm looking around. I think Mr. Fortin agreed. Do we have do we need to take a vote, or are we agreed on the 21st?
So just to clarify, we're adopting Mr. Green's motion and we're starting on the 21st.
That's correct.
That's what we're doing. That's where we landed. Okay.
It's the amended version. Okay. All right. I see everybody's giving me thumbs up on the screen. Okay. Can I,
The ball gown? I don't want to see that.
before, I wanted to also get agreement from you, if I may, because I've had discussions with the analysts, to take the opportunity to update the report to take into consideration the federal court decision and the government response to it. That'll be something we can review, but at least they can start bringing that update since it's been some time since the body of the report has been updated. Does everybody agree with that? And that would also give us something more to look at and to comment on, which is irrelevant from the materials that we're looking, will be waiting to come in. Senator Carignan?
Oui, troisième point, est-ce que
Third item, perhaps you could check with the analysts do we have a draft that could be actually tabled to the House and to the Senate on the progress made in our work before we rise for the summer? But that's a question to be shared with Mr. Fortin.
Mr. Fortin's
Mr.
comments.
Fortin is saying that I think that's a
Mr.
really good
Fortin, I
idea.
called you senator. I apologize.
C'est son rêve.
You're going back to the...
Merci pour les excuses.
Well, thank you for that.
So, comments around an interim report? Senator Harder.
I would oppose an interim report. I think we just get it done.
Okay. Other comments? Do we, Mr. Fortin? Oh, I apologize. Mr. Green
sorry.
was first. Mr. Green?
I would just say that in our deliberations, I think contemplating a brief report back is more of an administrative function than it is a big debate. It would just be a statement of facts, an explainer, if you will, why we weren't able to report back as a co-chair. I feel a bit of a responsibility, so I do support Mr. Fortin's and Mr. Carignan's suggestion. I would just hope that it's not something that would require, a whole bunch of debate, but would perhaps be best drafted by the co-chairs, signed off, and then presented back to our committee while we're doing the draft reporting, perhaps on the 21st, but if not, on the first section after that. So I would be fine to support that. It would just be a very brief statement of fact about where we're at.
Mr. Fortin?
Merci. Je suis d'accord avec ce que...
I agree with what Member Green has said for the 21st. Not a lot of big report, just a factual report. As we say, currently 25 words or less, but let's say 5 pages or so, that's it. Just the facts. And it's an interim report, just what phases that we've got done. And I think just for the benefit of our colleagues, whether they're in the Senate or the House of Commons, they deserve a little update.
I agree with Senator Harder. We don't need to do an interim report. If we're talking about something that's 5 pages long, I anticipate will take us 2 meetings to agree on the language of that thing, which eats into what we're trying to accomplish here. So what I would suggest is we defer this notion of an interim report until sometime in June after we've started the report process and see if it merits doing and what it might look like then. And we don't need to talk about it any further tonight.
Okay. Any other comments? All right. So we will ask the analysts then to start doing the amendment of the report in terms of adding the new information. And if I'm clear, we will reconvene on the 21st of May. And we'll have further discussions both on the interpretation issues as well as the draft report. And the next meeting will be in camera. Any,
Ben, est-ce qu'on peut prévoir que
Can we ensure that the meeting, can we ensure that you're suggesting that the entire meeting will be in camera? Perhaps I would suggest that when we're working on the report itself, we be in camera, but if we're trying to identify which elements, which documentary elements that we want to include and need translation, I don't think that that is part of the drafting process, so we need not be in camera.
next meeting on the 21st when we know what it is we're discussing?
we could decide
we
in
could-
public?
yeah.
Okay.
Mr. Fortin, I see your hand up.
Oui, je voulais simplement
Yes, I only wanted to clarify, I wasn't talking about 4 or 5 pages, 4 or 5 lines would do me well. But I proposed that, and Senator Carignan was in agreement, and Mr. Mulroney and Harder were not. Are we going to go for a brief interim report or not? I'll leave the content up to the analysts. It's going to be only a statement of fact. The 21st of May, we adopt that interim report, and then we get to work. It's just a formality, I think. But I think we'd show some respect for our respective colleagues. What goes in camera is our drafting work together when we're working on it. But the discussion of which documents, that should be public. That's part of the education of the public, if you will.
Mr. Green?
Thank you. I just want to remind members procedurally there's a motion on the floor. The motion was fairly specific. The report was not presented. The report option was not presented as an amendment. While I'm in support of it, I don't want to conflate the two motions. We do have a motion, I don't believe has passed, but was duly put on the floor. Is that correct?
No, it was never put on.
No, the motion that I presented, had that passed?
Yes.
Okay, sorry, I'm removed from the room, so I missed that part. So now, is there a motion on the floor for the report? Or had it been just a suggestion procedurally?
That's the question I was going to ask. Mr. Fortin, are you making a motion to do an interim report?
S'il vous plaît, oui,
Yes, please. I do so move that motion. Yes.
On the floor to do an interim report. Is there any parameters you'd like to put to that? Okay. Are you going to do a roll call? Do we have any other comments on the motion with the interim report?
So, do we proceed with the
Yes.
with the roll call? Okay. So for the motion of Mr. Fortin to prepare an interim report, the Honorable Gwen Boniface?
No.
L'Honorable Claude Carignan, CP?
Oui.
The Honorable Peter Harder, PC?
No.
The Honorable Larry Smith?
We.
Mr. Nakvi? Mr. Nakvi?
No. He said no.
His thumb is up. So yes.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
He's like this.
Mr. Nakvi, can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
I vote no.
No, thank you. Mr. Maloney?
No.
Ms. Romanado?
No.
Mr. Brock?
Oui.
Mr. Motz?
Sure, why not?
Monsieur Fortin?
oui.
And Mr. Green?
Yes.
So,
6 yeas, 5.
6 yeas, 5 nays, no.
The yeas have it, the motion passes. Okay. Any other matters? Motion to adjourn? All in favor?
Watch the game.